Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Hassan Labaskachni. I'm joined tonight again, as always, by my co-host and co-founder of Islamicity SA, Sheikh Anwar Jitam, and a very special guest tonight, Sheikh Iman Zwide Langa. And our topic tonight is something very important for South Africa, as we know that South Africa is a majority black country in terms of demographics. We know that there have been some dawah efforts from the Muslim community into the South African black community. But in many ways, we also feel as Muslims from various established communities like the South African Cape Malay community and the Indian community that perhaps our dawah efforts have not been successful, perhaps they are not current, perhaps they are not the most appropriate, and perhaps sometimes they are very short-sighted. And tonight we want to discuss what can be done in terms of establishing a unified South African Muslim community that includes Black South African Muslims, Malay Muslims, Indian Muslims, other reverts from other ethnic groups that can work together, prosper together, but also maintain their own unique ethnic and traditional heritage. And so I'll hand over to you, Sheikh Anwar, and then we can get the show on the road, inshallah.
This discussion that we're having tonight is a very, very important one. The South African Muslim community, for many years, has included a significant number of Muslims that come from the various black communities within the country. People that come from the various tribes, such as the Zulu, the Sotho, the Xhosa tribes. Many of them have either reverted to Islam or have been born as Muslims. And over the many years, they have experienced a very, their own unique challenges and also their own unique experiences being Muslims. The challenges that they've experienced sometimes has been in relation to other Muslims, and sometimes has also been in relation to their own cultural communities and ethnic communities that they come from. We also understand that the South African black Muslim community, one, is not monolithic, one coming from various different ethnicities and tribes and cultural backgrounds, but two, also the fact of demographics. Some South African Muslims live within former group areas X, the CAS, so to say. Others live in the leafy suburban areas of Johannesburg and Durban and Cape Town and the interior of the province. And yet there's also a significant amount of South African black Muslims that live in the rural parts of the country as well. And all of them would have different experiences. So tonight, inshallah, with my colleague and friend, Sheikh Zwide Iman Nkumalo Kalanga, who is an Imam and an activist, hailing very active within Soweto, we're going to unpack some of these discussions. So Iman, to kick off our discussions, inshallah, when we talk about the South African black Muslim community, is there a monolithic black Muslim identity, or how does the young black alim that is working with the South African black Muslim community, how do you look at the community, and how do you factor in the many, many cultural and linguistical differences and socioeconomic differences?
Sheikh Anwar, I think it's going to be very difficult to give you like a straight pinpointed answer on that one. But basically, this is what I want to say to set up the tone, perhaps, of the discussion today, is that Muslims, the indigenous Muslims, do not necessarily have their own identity. They have identities of those that invite them to Islam. For example, somebody comes to Islam through Indians, therefore adopts the identity of the subcontinent. Somebody accepts Islam through Egyptians, they'll have the identity of Egyptians. But we do not have like a unified kind of a local South African, although people are trying here and there. You can see that things are happening differently in the township, how the indigenous Muslims take Islam, are trying to gain that independence and to gain their own identity with regards to Islam. So I think at this moment we do not really have, because everyone interprets Islam according to how they have entered Islam.
But steps have been taken to form that identity. For example, the South African Black Muslim Conference, and there has been other efforts as well. And you can tell us more about that, if you will, please, about efforts to basically establish that type of pride and independence of the South African Black Muslim community, even going to the point, the necessary point of even, in terms of fiqh issues that the South African Black Muslim community faces, that perhaps other communities, especially established Muslim communities like the Indian community, the Malay community, that doesn't face those issues. And so there would be certain fiqh issues that the Black Muslim community faces when it comes to things such as labola and so forth, that perhaps nobody else can provide guidance on those issues but Black ulama and Black du'at, because that is part and parcel of their daily realities and their cultural experience.
But you see, Anwar, before going back, this is what I want to say. Africans generally, they are not united in many things. That's the most difficult part, and we have these difficulties even when we become Muslims, that we are unable to unite. And if you look at perhaps your community, Sheikh Anwar, you will see that sometimes, not even sometimes, many a time, they will unite on a good cause and disagree in whatever they disagree in. But that unity will be with the majority most of the time. So with us, it's very difficult. For example, if you want to discuss the conference, the conference was a good initiative, but I was part and parcel of the organizing committee and some of the important people behind the conference. But the conference, you can't form anything over a conference, because the conference need to have resolutions and you must act on those resolutions. And if you just have a talk show, it's not going to help you at the end of the day, because you're just going to meet the elite of the African indigenous Muslims of South Africa. Will just meet over a meal and have a nice talk and have the intellectual give lectures in front and all of those things, and then the weekend is over and then it's done. What's going to happen? But the Muslims on the ground are not going to get the benefit of the conference at the end of the day. So I think the conference is a good idea, but at the end of the day, you got to work the ground more than anything else. If you look at Sheikh Uthman Danfodio in Nigeria, for the Sokoto Empire, you must understand the community needs a lot of things. It's not just that you make one conference and then that's it.
Absolutely.
Then you find like the what we call the clever blacks who want to impress the Indians, or they want to impress the donors that we have done such and such, and that's the end of it, so that they can sit on the table and have samosas and tea and say, we have achieved this and we have done that. It's more than that. It's bigger than that. At the end of that, I'm saying, if you look at the metropolitan symbol and template of Sheikh Uthman Danfodio in the Sokoto Empire, you have to work the ground. At the end of the day, there is no two way about it. Once you don't work the ground, then you can call the conference every 2 years. The elite will pay that exorbitant amount and come and listen to the lectures and take pictures, and then that's the end of it. So it's very difficult, as I'm saying. I'm telling you now. That is why I wanted to say this from the beginning, that you find that somebody becomes a Muslim through the Salafia school of thought. When you talk about identity, that person is already on your neck, telling you that is haram, that is bid'ah, that is this, that is that, and you can't do anything. Then you have the Barelvis, for example, who then their ulama and their guidance and all of those things say you can't integrate with the Tablighis, you can't integrate with the Salafis, you can't integrate with this one. So the problem with the Africans is not going to be something that we can solve right now. That is why you have to have a community that believes in what you believe in. Look at how your community, Sheikh Anwar, mostly is Hanafiya, those that are in the school of thought. And maybe right now, I don't know, maybe there's a change, but you'll find most of the ulama have studied the Nizami Dars system. You know, there isn't really much of contradictions. Everyone comes from the same system. We all have almost the same, only now maybe we have the ikhtilaf of photography, and we have ikhtilaf of these minor things that are not so important. But the majority of the things is not things that Muslims do fight about in your community. It's things generally that everyone is happy about. The ikhtilafat are just, you know, furu'at that are not so important. But with our community, I'm telling you, every small thing causes confusion and infights and all of those things that, you know, you are a Tablighi. Zwide is a Tablighi, he can't tell us nothing. What can he tell us? He follows the Tablighi, goes for 3 days, khalas, he's not a Muslim.
So, for example, you are a young alim, you're a graduate, you work in the ground, right? In the spirit of what Sheikh Uthman Danfodio did in the Sokoto Empire, as an example, right? Can you tell us how you deal with such some of these challenges?
I came to Soweto. Soweto is like Palestine. It's either you're a Jew or you're a Philistine. There's an ongoing war that is getting on that is not going to end anytime soon. And Alhamdulillah, I came here with an understanding of how all the dynamics of Soweto. I've been in contact with the community for so long before I came here. And in my mind, even on my interview when I got employed, I did raise these issues. That you guys know very well that these are the issues that I'm going to face in Soweto. What must I do? Because, you know, but anyway, Anwar, just to respond to your question, my way of dealing with these kind of things is that my main focus, my main focus will be the madrasa children. For example, when I came here, there was no madrasa. Now you start the madrasa with a very clear vision to say, these are the people that need to take Islam with the same mentality, with the same way of doing things. I'm breeding small Imam Shafi'i and Imam Nafi'i here, and I don't want any confusion or anything that will come from outside. Because when you come here, for example, when I came here first Ramadan, I did the witr, and it started a huge problem. They say, no, we are, you know, majority are Hanafis, you're going to confuse the community. Majority of the people who are here don't even know what is Hanafiya and what it entails. They don't even know how to make salah properly. You understand what I'm saying? And for myself, I think that for the township, I would say that you do not have a madhab. Your madhab is your imam's madhab. Because he's the one who possesses the knowledge, and he's the one who's going to teach you. He's the one, the community is going to do things according to his madhab. Not according to somebody who thinks that majority of the community is Hanafiya, which is not. They do not follow the Ahnaf and something like that. So on a very serious note, Anwar, I think for myself, my focus is more on the madrasa kids. If I were to have the resources in building these kids, I'm telling you, in 10 years, I can show you what the Black indigenous South African Muslims can be. I'm not very fond of reverts and people who come into Islam, or those the madalas who have been there in Islam, because those are the ones that make trouble a lot. Those ones are the troublemakers. You'll find one Jahil Murakkab Tam. Jahil Murakkab Tam. He is the one that makes the loudest of noise. For example, I'm telling you, you'll be shocked in the township. Somebody embraces Islam today, and tomorrow he comes saying, you know what, brothers, you can't eat Albani. Albani is a haram. I mean, you just came yesterday. Istinja also you can't make, but you already give it fatwas.
You can't eat Albani, but you can follow Albani.
Exactly my point. Exactly that. Imagine somebody just comes and say, no, Albani says Albani is not halal.
Sheikh Iman, I just want to ask a question, like based on what you've been saying, especially with regards to, you made mention that a lot of the black South African Muslims, they've taken a lot of inspiration, or they've like you described it, sort of went on autopilot in terms of the Islam, in terms of just accepting wholesale whatever they got from the people who initially introduced them into Islam. So if they were introduced to Islam by the Barelvis, then they will follow that manhaj. If that school of thought, if they're introduced by Salafis, then they will follow the Salafia way of thought. And most of the people in South Africa are introduced to Islam by predominantly Indian duat. Because in Johannesburg and Gauteng and the surrounding areas, KwaZulu-Natal, most of the Muslims tend to be Indian, and the Indian Muslim community is very well established. So a lot of the da'wah efforts are driven by them. But in terms of that, I want to know from you, what would a black South African Muslim kind of identity, in order to get a unified, sort of get some unity in the South African black community, would that require to kind of have a more political outlook in terms of Islam, in terms of community organization, so focusing on those lessons that Islam gives and the guidance Islam gives with regards to community organization and, social upliftment, justice, and that kind of thing, instead of focusing on, the cultural aspects, so that you can create unity? Or what would be sort of a way of overcoming that? Because otherwise you're just replicating those disputes that you have in the Indian community, in the black community. What would be sort of a solution to that?
To be honest with you, for me, I feel that you see, when China gained independence, they closed their borders and focused on themselves, and they built themselves going forward, And then later on, they start opening to other people in other countries and having diplomatic relationships with whoever in the world. Right now, if it was for me, that is what I will try to do where I am right now in Soweto. If it was for me, honestly, I would say that, you know what, we got to go back to the drawing board and unlearn whatever that we have learned, and let the ulama sit down and think that what can work for us and what cannot work for us. Because at the end of the day, we have, when we become Muslims, we have serious issues that we deal with, and sometimes we as ulama, because we are unable to even agree on small things, we are unable to solve the people's problems on the ground, fiqh issues. We understand what I'm saying? Now, for me, I'll give you an example. I don't know if you have seen online. There's a community called Al Falaq community in the East End. That community is a community led by Sheikh Muhammad Milanzi. Allah Ta'ala preserve him, give him a lengthy life. They follow the Tariqa Tijaniya of Sheikh Tijani, and they strictly follow that, and the teachings and everything of their community are strictly from the Tijani Tariqa. Now, like that, they have found their identity. We do not want to get involved with anyone. We built our own masjid. We have our own people. We contribute our own selves, and we focus on ourselves. I think for me, that will be the solution for the indigenous Muslims. At the end of the day, you got to have somebody that leads you. That's another thing. Because South African indigenous Muslims, that is why I'm telling you, Jahil Murakkab Tam, Himar, comes yesterday, and already today is a mufti, is a big sheikh. That's the biggest problem that we are having. I don't know, maybe in Cape Town it's different. Maulana Bilal, maybe you can say something different, I don't know. But I can guarantee you in Joburg, you'll find a serious problem. I can give you 20 names right now from this community that I'm in. We had somebody right now who embraced Islam recently, and she was trending online. And somebody who didn't even learn anything. Now, because you are a revert, you are trending online, she even goes into fiqh issues that she has no right to discuss and discuss them online and mislead the non-Muslims or whoever that is following them online. So it's a problem for me. So that is why I'm saying that you got to build from scratch. You have to close whatever borders from the Indian community, the Egyptians, the Somalians, the everyone. And you focus on yourself and ask yourself, you are a Muslim, what needs to be done for you to grow as a Muslim going forward?
What do you perceive to be the community's challenges, and how do you believe, firstly, what are these challenges in the community, and how do you believe they should be engaged, inshallah?
I fully agree with what Shaykh is saying, Shaykh Iman, and I believe that's my mission actually in life, to establish a Muslim community within the township. And so there must be a plan. And part of that plan is what Sheikh said, that we need to, to close off all, if that's possible, connection with the outside world, so that we then maybe find our own identity, find ourselves, and then from there we can maybe open up again to the world. But yeah, the reality is, as Black South Africans, we suffer in terms of economics, and the other Muslims maybe outside the township, they themselves do not suffer this. And I've came up with some sort of an idea, some sort of a plan that I've been working on, and very soon, inshallah, I want to present it to the communities at large and maybe see if is there a way to help me in this regard. And so, first of all, we do have challenges. And the challenges are exactly as what Sheikh said. You get Salafiyah, you get... Actually, for me, I would say we get Salafiyah and the rest of the brothers, because most of the time, the other brothers, they do not have problems with themselves, whether maybe it's a Sunni, maybe it's a Sufi or Tablighi. There's no issues up until maybe the Salafiyah brothers come into play, and then they would then bring up these issues and problems. However, for me, the solution with that is that they should be just left as they are, because most of the time they run away from the township. What I notice is that they want to be in a already established Muslim environment, and in most cases that's not in the township. And they, again, for example, in Cape Town, they will then maybe move to just places like that, and so we are left with the township and to deal with our own issues. And so for me, I don't find them as so much as a problem. The plan for this Muslim identity that I've come up with is that first of all, we need to deal with the adults. I understand the Sheikh said that maybe the kids starting from scratch, but for me, what I've noticed was that the children, it's always been a cycle that's been happening, that in every maybe 3 year, you get those children who were once in madrasa. When they reach a certain age, maybe they become teenagers, then they then they want to maybe be part of the community at large, which is now a non-Muslim community. They want to integrate into society, and the society, it's not Muslim society. And then for them, integration means leaving Islam and forsaking Islam. And so for me, I've thought that no, man, we need to maybe deal with the older people who are the environment, so that when a child grows up, when a child feels maybe the pressure to integrate into society, and that's why society is a Muslim society. And so the plan was that we need to have a masjid in a township, first of all. And around that masjid, get the Muslim people to move, maybe buy the property around the masjid or rent property around the masjid. And once everyone moves into one space, and then we can continue with more and more needed things to be learned and established in the community. But first is a masjid, and then getting people to move around the masjid. And but then you find that it's not easy to maybe to rent property, for example. And so because of the lack of employment. And so I thought, okay, majority of the Muslims around in South Africa, the non-black Muslims, you find that they own big businesses. They have cash and carries and stuff like that. So the idea was to approach these people and tell them, look, we're not asking you for money, but whenever you need to employ somebody, why don't you maybe first give us a call so that you can help in our da'wah by getting a black Muslim person who just accepted Islam, or whoever who's been a Muslim for quite some time, and then that person then gets a job. And that money that he gets from that job, it's a contribution back to his community, which is then the community that he has now recently moved to, which is around the masjid. But then the person who then has to be in charge of this whole thing, it is to be the Imam in the community. Like that, maybe some sort of an undying loyalty might be born from this thing, because of the Imam he's like maybe in helping them getting jobs, helping them getting spaces to sit to stay, like houses and stuff like that. And by having this loyalty from these people, which is bought unfortunately by this job, by this but then that loyalty means that everyone, as Shaykh said, that everyone is on the madhab of the Imam. So it's easy now for the Imam to lay rules, to lay systems that each and every person would follow. And so if a person maybe moves into the community, maybe the rule is that no missing your salat. The rule is that the children, they participate, they attend the madrasa. And so like a few other things will then maybe be sorted without really like the struggle of trying to enforce maybe children going to madrasa, but by simply having the loyalty of the parent, then the child automatically comes to the madrasa.
I want to just ask a question. It's just something that stood out for me from between what Mona Bilal just mentioned and what Sheikh Iman was saying earlier. And that's that, there has to be a kind of, I suppose, an isolationist approach, I think you could call it, in the black community in South Africa, where closed borders. And this reminds me a lot of what Malcolm X said when he was asked by journalists how, well-meaning white people can help the black struggle in America during the civil rights, the struggle for civil rights. Malcolm X, rahimahullah, his response was that, white people should ideally let black people solve their own problems. Let black people build those self-sufficient systems, let them build their own infrastructure, let them deal with their own problems without trying to chime in. So if I'm getting it right, is that what Sheikh Iman and Sheikh Bilal, is that what you are advocating, that it's, especially the Indian community, for instance, should perhaps not be in a position where they can dictate terms of what the practice of Islam should look like in the black community, and that, Imams from the black community should rather work on their own communities?
I would say that in some maybe extent that's required. Obviously, not totally isolation. For example, if maybe the community outside want to help, they should help according to the help that we need. For example, they will bring maybe a pot of food, and you find the food that they brought, it is not necessarily needed in the community, because of maybe there's an influx of like pots of food coming in. Everyone just wants to help only with the pot of food, and that pot of food, it was maybe bought with monies, like all the ingredients. Maybe why not maybe give the money to the community, or ask them what do they really need.
I concur partially with you, Maulana Bilal. Number one, my first point where I agree with you is that we do not mean that we want complete isolation. For example, our communities are not business-oriented communities. So we want that financial assistance from the other communities to help us establish ourselves. That's number one. But the problem is that, for example, here in Johannesburg, we are dealing with the Indian communities. I don't know if I have the liberty to say things as they are, because sometimes we have restrictions, because they threaten that you might lose your job. Say, oh, you speak like this, then you know what, they call you to the office. But anyway, what I want to say is that sometimes some of the organizations, they arrogantly want to give money, but they want to give money with their terms and conditions. This must happen, this must not happen, this must happen, this must not happen. For example, there was another group of people who claimed to be doing dawah, and they came here to the masjid. And so I told them, I said, you know what? I think I'm the most relevant person to give these people dawah, not you, because you do not know these people. And for example, you have one of my neighbors here who's working in lands as a domestic worker. So when you come and tell her about Islam, then she says, but Islam is not what you people preach. How I am treated where I'm working is contrary to what you are telling me about Islam. We understand what I'm saying? Now, my main thing that I want to highlight is that part of contribution must come from the other communities. For example, we have had the influx of foreigners in South Africa right now. And the influx of foreigners, especially in the township as well, it brings another big problem. For example, the issue of Crescent Sighting in South Africa. You'll find the Somalis will come and confuse the rivers and say, no, you know what, there is no way. Why must you follow Indians?
That's true.
The closest people to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam are the Arabs, who are the custodians of the Haramain and Sharifain. And you want to tell us how many Arafat are there? Are there 2 Arafat? Even during Ramadan, they will tell you how many Lelethu Qadr are there. Do you have your own Lelethu Qadr, and Saudi has their own Lelethu Qadr? You understand those kind of dynamics. Now, when you have influx of so many people coming to your community, you imagine I teach this child in the madrasa. For example, in South Africa, the most common thing is the 6 kalimas that we have inherited from the from the subcontinent. We teach the kids kalimas. You understand what I'm saying? Now, which is not something that they established from the Sunnah or whatever. I don't know. You people can argue. You are ulama and all of those things. But for the sake of teaching the child basic stuff about Allah and the deen and all of those things, we teach the child those kind of things. And then the child, out of excitement, will go to the shop and say, Assalamu alaikum, I'm a Muslim. I've learned the 4th kalima in madrasa. Then the Somali will say, hey, there's no such thing. What you learn there is not Islam. Now, that is exactly what I'm trying to say, that we have to close the borders. No one must say things to us, and we must not be taking things from someone else. We, alhamdulillah, we went to madrasa, and we have learned what is Islam, and we are the ones are going to be the custodians of Islam now, and tell the people what we are. For example, Indians have been giving fatwas for the indigenous people for a very long time. And sometimes they give very wrong fatwas also. For example, you have somebody, I know more than 10 people that hate Islam today because of the wrong fatwas that they've got from our Indian brethren. For example, somebody, his mother passes on, and then he asks his Maulana, his Mufti, and say, you know what, my mother has passed on, what must I do? Then they tell her, you know what, she's kafir, don't even go there. Right? Islam doesn't even allow you to stand in her grave. Now that person thinks, now what must that person do now? Must they weigh whether they want to remain as Africans or by default Christians, or they must take this Islam that is so strict on them that says if your mother dies, you must not even go to her janaza? We understand what I'm saying? Today, if you see in Durban, there's a community, Guamashu, where they sing and they have their own anashid in Zulu and all of those things. Even here in Soweto, we have all of those things. Although our Salafi brethren are against it and are fighting with us. But Islam has grown to that level right now that everyone now tries with their own communities, wherever they are, they try to find their own ground and to find their own identity. Whoever says what, for example, if you see these brothers in Guamashu in Devon, they are linked with Tarim in Yemen. So they follow the Ahbab and they do things according to the Ahbab, and they also studied from the Barelvi school of thought. So that's their way of doing things, and they've cut everyone out. If you say something against that, they don't listen to you. So that's what I'm saying. For example, I don't know if you saw last year, there was a church and a pastor that embraced Islam in Durban and all of those things, and there was a big hoo-ha about that whole situation, and the pastor went for Hajj and all of those things. But honestly, where are those people now? Why aren't they trending? Why is the community in Devon not showing us where are those people? Did they build a masjid? Because the church supposedly accepted Islam, isn't it? Why didn't they build a masjid there? If they've got so much interest in that, why didn't they build a masjid? Why are they not giving us updates right now to say, where are those people? You can't have more than 300 people and the pastor and the bishop and the archbishop accepting Islam and then the story vanishes into thin air. It doesn't work like that. Now, this is where the problem is, that you have people that come and impose themselves in our communities, and when we want to sit with them and tell them this is not how things are done in our communities, then they declare us as, you know, anti-Indian, or they declare us as people who are arrogant and people who want to work alone and all of those things. But this is where I agree with Maulana Bilal to say that, you know what, partially, or maybe 95%, we have to close the borders and cut off and also the biggest problem also that we have this commercialized dawah. You know, that's the biggest problem also. We have Shahada Festival in Soweto, people are there taking Shahada, people take videos, and then they create problems for us, and then they are gone. They are just happy with the pictures and the videos that they've got in their phones.
I hear you on all
So
of
that
that.
is why personally I disagree with Maulana Bilal in working with the older generation. The older generation for me is very toxic. I have no interest. I just deal with them because you can't run away from them. But my main interest is these young kids. That's why I'm saying that it's not going to work maybe now. Give me 10, 15 years. The same employment, Maulana, that you are talking about. After 10 years of these kids studying, we'll take them to school, we'll take them to madrasa, we'll take them to varsity, then we look for placement for their employment, and they must be active citizens to give back to the community. And people must see that Islam does work, because in conclusion, Maulana Hassan, if you allow me, in conclusion, I would like to say that for me, I've been working, I'm here in Soweto for 4 years now, but I've been actively involved from where I come from in Springs for more than 10 years. I know I've experienced, I know what I'm talking about. So, and I've also been involved in the greater scheme of things in the bigger organization of the Indigenous Muslims. So now, for me, you see, another biggest problem that doesn't allow us to have this unified approach is that, for example, in the township right now, I believe that we have 3 categories of Muslims besides the madrasa children. The madrasa children, Maulana Bilal is correct, that later on, they will decide whether they want to remain as Muslims or not. So I have a vision of how to work on the madrasa children for them to remain Muslims. You have 3 categories of Muslims in the township. Number 1, you have the Muslims that have been Muslims for a long time. They found Islam and they love Islam and they are committed Muslims. They are good practicing Muslims and they've been there for quite some time. And they are there for their salah whenever they are available. They are there for their Jum'ahs, their Eid, and they are there. They're just committed Muslims like anyone else. And then on the second level, you have what we call biryani Muslims. Those that are there on special occasions. When there's one deck of food that comes from lands, then they are there. they are very excited to have the biryani and enjoy the Indian delicacies. And, after that, they vanish. They are no longer to be
And the
seen.
majority, that's the majority.
Unfortunately. And then you have the last category, which has been something that has been growing now in the township, which I call STI. The STI means the sexual transmitted Islam. So it's those kids that are born from mixed races, like you have Indians marrying Africans, you have Bengalis marrying Africans, you have Somalians, those interracial marriages. Then they give birth to these STI Muslims in the township, which is something that is growing in South Africa. Is so big that even the non-Muslims, they laugh at us. They say that when you get married to a Pakistani or a Somalian or an Indian or whatever, then they join two names of the African language and they join it with Arabic. So, for example, we have Abdullah. So you have Abdullah. I don't know, Molana Bilal, if you have this in Cape Town. If you see in TikTok also is trending this thing online as well. They have Abdullah, Abdullah. So it's a mixture for them. They join an Arabic word with a Zulu word. So this has become, the STI Muslims has become a very growing number in the township, of which also they themselves, they sometimes don't remain as Muslims, because you'll find that maybe the father divorces the mother, and then out of anger, the mother puts pressure on the child, you can't be a Muslim and this and all of those things. Most of the time, you're just breeding irtidat and irtidat and irtidat, which brings me to my main focus of saying, instead of focusing there, rather focus on these kids. We are very fortunate in South Africa that the non-Muslim families around the masajid are readily accepting to give their kids to the masajid and say, teach them your religion. So if we were to really appreciate that, we will grow. Honestly, we will definitely grow. And I hope, apologies for taking so long, but I think maybe that can contribute something.
If we can, for example, engage Sheikh Bilal, what's your take, on what Sheikh Zwide is saying regarding the community? Also, I'll be honest, as a South African Muslim, as someone that has been born here in this country, right? I am concerned when you say close off the the Black Muslim community to outside interferences. Ultimately, we live in one united country. But the fact is that Islam is supposed to act as a bridge builder and build bridges between different ethnic groups and different cultures and different communities, despite the problems that we may have had with one another in the past that was caused by colonization and apartheid. So there's no doubt there is and there will continue to be communication of South African Muslims across the cultural divide. Now, how does this need to happen in a way in which the Black Muslim community does not feel like it's been undermined and stripped of its dignity?
I would say that that needs to be done according to, obviously, in the mashura of the Black Muslims, right? Not how maybe one feels like they can maybe participate. One should then maybe ask outside, who's like from outside now the Black Muslim community, like how can we assist? And then assist in that regard. But then the problem with that as well is that there were people initially, maybe in the early 2000s, even in the late 90s, who were maybe interested in helping the township Muslim. But then the problem at that time, we didn't get ulama in the township Muslim community. It was still maybe at an early stage back then that people didn't really go and study that much. And so you get people who didn't study deen receiving so much help from the outside Muslim world. And then because of they have no knowledge of deen, and then you find that those funds or whatever help was then given to them was misused. And so now you find the Muslim people, the non-black Muslim people, that they're not really interested anymore, or maybe they're a bit more in terms of like helping the black Muslim community, when now like there is now a group of people who are now graduates who have vision, who say that we have a vision, we need assistance. However, this assistance should come to how I have maybe studied Deen and came to understand my community. I think this vision, or maybe this idea, should be implemented in such a way. But then now the person who's being told this, who's in a position to help, has experienced the lack of competence from maybe the earlier generation, who might have not been ulama, who might have not had the knowledge of Deen. And so now they're no longer interested in helping, or maybe they're a bit skeptical when it comes to helping the black Muslim community at this moment, but not looking at the fact that before they were dealing with people who didn't have the knowledge of Deen. And now there are people who are in the black Muslim community who are graduates, who have studied Deen. And so I would say that the connection between the two, the black Muslim community and the non-black Muslim community, is that there should be a mashura, or a communication of some sort, that what is the vision? How can we assist? And not feel that they should impose their ideas on how to assist the black Muslim community. Because I myself, I was in the Eastern Cape. After I graduated, I got employed by this organization. However, that organization felt that they felt that they wanted to assist the growth of Islam in the township according to how they felt is the way. And I tried to show them, I tried to quote verses, however, that made me look more bad to them. I don't understand that for them it was the masjid is going to become dirty. There is napak in najasa. There's children do not know Deen. They should only be here for the 2-hour period of madrasa time, and after that they should leave the premises. I'm like, no, the masjid is the connection of the community. They should be here as long as they can. Yes, maybe for now they don't understand the tahara according to Islam and teach. I said that's how I quoted the story of the Sahabi who peed in the masjid, and the Prophet didn't like make a big deal out of it. He said, just pour water on it on the spot. I said, exactly how I told them I'm not telling the children to pee in the masjid, but I'm just saying that they don't understand the intricacies of the tahara according to Islam teachings. And so maybe for the first few months or few weeks, we're going to have to maybe tolerate that there is going to be some dirt in the masjid, and not really tolerate it, but be tolerated up until maybe we clean it. Show them, no, this is not right. And these children were getting along and beginning to understand, oh, they have to take off their shoes. Because for them, Islam was like the very first time being introduced to Islam. And so they didn't understand concepts like that, because they wanted to impose Islam in the community according to how they see that they should do it. For example, some other communities, they charge the madrasa children a fee for attending the afternoon madrasa. And someone was asking me that how much you charge them. I asked them, what do you mean? Do I charge children in the township to study Islam? We are trying to get them by all means. We have snacks to try and pull them to the masjid, and you're asking me to charge the children to pay for attending madrasa. That's like another reason for them not to come to the masjid. And so for me, I would say that the conversation should start from how can we assist for those who want to assist, and then We tell them the vision. From there, we find a way. As I said, it's a mashura because of we're not an island as well, so we cannot maybe completely isolate. But then, in some way or the other, there must be some sort of isolation that takes place so that we may uh, breathe at each other's neck and find a way forward because of the younger generations. They are just from as I said, according to how I saw, and that they for me, I find the younger generation just people who they become adults or maybe young adults who integrate into a community, and whatever that community does, they do that. And so that's why this idea of focusing on the older generation is that they should be the the society or the community that these children, when they grow up, they should be the community that these children integrate to.
Look, Sheikh Anwar, I get what you're saying also about that. And I might be one of those who call you out a bit for this, for the Rainbow Nation, Rainbow Dream, or the sentiments of unity, and all of us just getting along across ethnic and linguistic and racial lines. But we know that oftentimes, in theory it sounds great, but in practice it doesn't often happen that way. And I feel that, look, there is bridge building has to happen, but bridge building will happen when the time is right. And I think, speaking myself as a revert from a community that is perhaps, look, I think it's the most difficult target audience for dawah in South Africa, and that's the Boere, the Afrikaans people, or the aka the refugees, or the Revio Jeep. Revio Jeep is
The
the other one.
refugees have
So
left already.
yeah.
Those that are here are not refugees.
So yeah, the refugees are tough to give dawah to. My people are very difficult to give dawah to, but I find that, of those handful of Afrikaans Muslims that I've encountered, all of them have adopted they've adopted a culture. So they either fall into the Salafiyah, and that tends to be the majority of white reverts that I see tend to go in the Salafi direction, and then a few of them have gone the Ba'alawi way. So a lot of them are, with Sheikh Abdurrahman Khan, and some of them end up in Tarim in Yemen and they stay there. One of them even got married to a Yemeni woman and he said he's never coming back. There's one particular brother that I remember from way back who was like a Boer Muslim. So he would wear he'd make kurtas in the style of like the khaki clothes that the AVB guys used to wear, but like in a kurta style. And
Right.
so he kind of formulated his own identity, right? Incorporating all those things. And he would have like posts where he used to braai and he'd like go fishing and stuff and drive a big Hilux bakkie, but it would have like a Taliban flag on it or something. Also, for instance, in the UK at Cambridge University, Sheikh Timothy Winter, Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad, he's very much focused on this project of creating a true Anglo-Islam, like an Islamic tradition that incorporates elements from the English history and from their literature, etc. And I think for like any community in South Africa, I think in my case with Afrikaans Muslims, that's a bit far-fetched to imagine that we are going to come up with something like that, because there's just simply not enough of us. And in terms of like an ummatic vision for South Africa, like thinking about how do we make everyone in South Africa Muslim, the black community in South Africa is the target for dawah because they're the majority. So if every black person in South Africa becomes Muslim overnight, we've got the country. Then South Africa is a Muslim country. So um, how, I'm thinking like it's important that the South African black community develop that kind of culture of being a black South African Muslim in a way that incorporates your and respects your heritage and your traditions, and at the same time doesn't compromise on anything from a Shari'i perspective. And in order to do that, Sheikh Anwar, I feel like it's important to block out those influences of people coming to dictate, because we know many people mean well. They mean well, but some people just, they can't help. There is just that power dynamic, and there is that uneven, um, um, the disparity in wealth, and that tends to drive them to act and interact with people in a certain way, and so that ends up, you know, taking the form of they try to dictate the terms. So they'll give, splash a lot of money in a township, but then they want to pull the strings and say that the masjid must be run this way, and the masjid must be on this maslak or this manhaj, and you have to take the fatwa of these ulama who are attached to this Darul Uloom. And I think that kind of bridge is a bridge to nowhere. So if it's about bridge building, that's already like defeating the purpose. So now it's like we're trying to swim over the river to get into the black community. We should just wait for them to build a bridge, and then we can come over.
Take this further. Look, I'm not talking about basically patronizing and paternalistically looking over and into the black community and interfering with its affairs. You guys know that I don't mean that, right? What I am talking about is rather like, the idea of, for example, it's unavoidable that we have to interact. It's unavoidable that we are going to, work with one another on many shared projects, because this deen belongs to all of us, right? But at the same time, I mean, and myself and Iman have had these conversations, quite a bit prior to this, is that we see in the Black Muslim community that, for example, just like as there are in other Muslim communities in South Africa, there are the entrepreneurs, they are the white collar professionals, your doctors, your lawyers, your engineers, and so forth. All of those elements are there. Yes, it may be different compared to maybe, let's say, established Muslim communities, because we know that the South African black community, by and large, is coming out of basically a system of historic disadvantage. 31 years into South Africa's freedom and democracy, and we're still undoing the legacies of apartheid. And no doubt that is going to, affect somebody's, let's say, experience of being in a Muslim community, right? But we are at this point where, for example, and Sheikh Iman, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but black Muslims have decided to do it for themselves, because they do have the human and, in many cases, even material resources to be able to essentially create their own functional communities and community institutions, so that Islam actually starts to grow very organically and deeply within South Africa.
No, 100%, Anwar. I agree with you there. I think, as Maulana Hassan is saying, that the local indigenous people must build a bridge. But I think for now, I think it will be too early to build a bridge to allow people to come in. Although they are already have trespassed and are already within, although they are not here, but they live within our spaces. For example, you got here 1 kilometer away from me, you got the Parelvi Masjid that is down the road here. But those that are pulling the strings are saying, don't integrate with the other masjid. On Eid, don't even go to their Eidgah. You must do your own Eid. We understand what I'm saying? So like that, you can see that the influence of the Indian outside influence is so detrimental to us as the local indigenous people, because they want to remain afloat and they want to remain relevant by pulling the strings because they have the financial strength. It's very difficult. And you have there, it's even much more stricter. Alhamdulillah, where I am, maybe it's not so strict. They're not breathing on my neck, to tell me what must I do and what I mustn't do. And Alhamdulillah, also our Darulum, they don't take our shahada back when appear on screens and all of those things. Allahu balaka shukr walaka alhamd. So we are very fortunate, and we are not coming from where we are threatened. If we must be politically correct, otherwise then they withdraw the certificate and you remain yourself, you know. So alhamdulillah, but I'm just hoping if we were, I'm saying those who have money, the community that has money, if they were to sit with us, you know, faqidu shay la yu'ti min adami, you know, they must empower us as imams, as those that went to study. They must empower us, and we must be the ones that empower the community, you know, because if the imam is not empowered, you can't work with someone who's worried about his stomach. That person is not there. He's there, but he's not there. He's worried about whatever that his basic needs, actually, you know. Because at the end of the day, I'm married. I've got a wife. I've got kids. I've got so many things that I got to do at the end of the day. And sometimes, if you look at things, you can't survive just by focusing on madrasa and all of those things. So for me, it's a great thing. You got to be established. The great ulama in the past, they were established themselves. You know, even in the established communities today, we see that ulama are wealthy and they've got their own things. And we have seen a trend as well that where ulama are doing mamad for free. They're teaching madrasa for free because they're trying to run away from the influence and the power of those that have money that is imposed on them. So as I'm saying that if you are not empowered, there's so many things that we can do. I'm telling you, with the money that the Muslims have, wallah, I'm telling you, in the next 10, 20 years, we can work the ground in such a way that at least 30% must be Muslims in the right way. I'm not saying this commercialized dawah where you have Shahada festivals and you have the Muslims just saying la ilaha illallah, you take pictures and then they go. No. A proper system that you set that when a rivet becomes a Muslim, yeah, in South Africa, you become a rivet till you die. You know, you become a new Muslim even after 30 years. They still say, yes, Iman is a new Muslim. I mean, like, in my class, I was fighting with the boys that I studied with. Some of them were younger than me. When I became Muslim, he was not even valid. But he's telling me I'm a new Muslim. So you understand where I'm coming from. So that's what I'm saying, that, you know, we at the end of the day, in the township, I'm telling you, in Soweto, of 5 million people in Soweto, in every 5 people in Soweto that you meet, one of them will give you salam, a proper salam, and claim to be Muslim. That means if we were to work the ground, not worried about calling people to Islam, work on this one, we'll have 1 million people that are Muslims in Soweto. Just working the ground, doing our work properly, we are ought to succeed and make sure that Islam grows. But otherwise, the way things are going, the way the influence of, you know, in our local, you know, the Tsotsital in the township, they say Abdul Razak, you know, the person that pays your salary, they call them Abdul Razak. So everything works according to what Abdul Razak says, because he's got your risk, you know. So if Abdul Razak says no, it's a no. If Abdul Razak says yes, it's a yes. So unfortunately, that's. But I so wish that I'm saying in Soweto, I'm very positive. If we were to do our work, alhamdulillah, we got Soweto Muslim Association. That's what we are doing. Inshallah, if we have the financial strength, we're gonna have our first Muslim school in the township in Soweto, inshallah, in our lifetime. We're gonna have our first Darul Uloom in Soweto in our lifetime. We're gonna have our first Soweto Hibs Academy in Soweto in our lifetime. And so many things must happen through us in our lifetime in the township, done by us for our people. Because once we once we wait for Abdul Razak, then Abdul Razak will say, no, you know what, my Shaykh told me this, you can't do that, you can't do, then, you know, then it start clashing, then things don't work out. So I hope, inshallah, maybe this can help us. I don't know.
We really benefited from your insight and our dua. And I know Sheikh Anwar and I both share the sentiment. We want every person in South Africa, every soul in South Africa to turn to Islam. We want this country wholesale, completely to become Muslim. And, you know, the black Muslims of South Africa are key to that. And maybe just on on a final note, I spoke to some du'at from overseas not too long ago, earlier in this year. And one of the things that came up in our discussion was they said, you know, uh, Sheikh Hassan, where you come in is, the black Muslims in South Africa, they don't want to listen to a black guy. They want if a white person says something, they'll believe it. So we want you to go give dawah in the black community. And I just thought, subhanallah, I hope inshallah that's not true.
Can work, Sheikh Hassan. Sorry to interject there. That can work because that's the psychological effect of apartheid. So black people will listen to an Afrikaner anytime. So maybe we must
Inshallah,
use and you must use that power that you have.
But yeah, inshallah, we really hope that those bridges, we can get to the point where those bridges between our communities get built, inshallah. And it's our dua for the black community in South Africa. Myself, as someone from Cape Town, it was fascinating to me and really inspiring when I came to Johannesburg for the first time to see Muslim faces that I could tell this person is like this is a local South African black person. It's not a Malawian or a Tanzanian. And I could tell, like, wow, there's a lot of them. Subhanallah. It was because I never seen this in Cape Town. It was really strange to me. I saw like there's multi-generational black Muslim families in Johannesburg. And for me, that was really inspiring. And it just made me think.
On our podcast, that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to expose those local indigenous Muslims to the world that are there, especially those that are in the forefront of their professions, like lawyers, doctors, and so on.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all successful in our efforts for da'wah and in attaining more knowledge, and make us all ambassadors for Islam, inshallah. Sheikh Iman, Jazakallah khairan. It's a pleasure to share the screen with you again, and Sheikh Anwar. I think they will call it a night. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.